The most dangerous person is the one who leaves without anger, without regret, without a backward glance. Because when someone walks away in silence, it means they have already left in their soul. The world they built around you was an illusion, a carefully crafted reality where they assumed you would always stay. They mistook your patience for permanence, your kindness for compliance, your loyalty for obligation. But now they stand in shock, watching you disappear, realizing too late that you were never truly theirs to control. This isn't just about leaving, it's about reclaiming your power. They underestimated your strength, assuming you would always bend, always endure, always be available. But a chosen one does not exist to be drained, manipulated, or trapped. When you walked away, you didn't just remove yourself from their world. You erased your presence so thoroughly that their reality crumbled without you. They called you selfish, cold, and ungrateful. They whispered to themselves that you changed. But the truth, you woke up, you saw through the illusion, you realized that staying wasn't love, it was self-destruction. And when the moment came, you chose yourself. Walking away wasn't an act of weakness. It was the most powerful thing you ever did. Because when a chosen one walks away, they don't just leave people behind, they leave behind the version of themselves that tolerated less than they deserved. This is your awakening, and now you rise. You were there, but never seen. They didn't lose you, they lost the privilege of your presence. They never saw you as a person with dreams, emotions, and limits. You were a convenience, a constant, a quiet force that made their world run smoothly. They were comfortable knowing you would always be there, so they never bothered to ask if you were happy, if you were tired, if you were drowning under the weight of their expectations. You were a shadow in the room, a voice only heard when expected. They mistook your silence for agreement, your patience for contentment, your endurance for love. But they never realized that every moment you stayed, you were already leaving in your mind. Every time they dismissed your feelings, every time they ignored your needs, every time they assumed you would always be there, they were unknowingly writing their own goodbye. And when the day finally came, when you gathered the strength to walk away, they sat in disbelief, staring at the empty space you left behind, asking themselves how they never saw this coming. But that's the thing, they never really saw you at all. Now they sit with the echo of what they never appreciated. They try to convince themselves that you changed, that you turned cold. But the truth is, you didn't change. You finally saw your worth. You finally realized that being physically present while emotionally neglected was not a life. You finally accepted that staying where you are invisible is not loyalty, it's self-betrayal. And the bitter truth they now face, you were the glue holding everything together, and without you, their world feels smaller, emptier, and unbearably quiet. Let them grieve. Let them sit in their regret. Because this time, you're not coming back. They drained your light, then cried in the darkness. They thought your energy was limitless. They assumed your warmth, your kindness, your strength were resources they could take and take, without ever needing to give anything back. You were the fire that kept them warm, the steady glow that lit their path, and they mistook your light for something they were entitled to. They never asked if you were tired. They never noticed when your glow began to flicker. They never considered that even the brightest flame can burn out if it's never fed. They stood in your light, basked in your presence, consumed your energy like it was infinite. And when you had nothing left to give, they did not offer fuel, they simply demanded more. And now they sit in the cold, confused, lost in the darkness they never prepared for. They miss you, or so they say. But let's be honest, they don't miss you. They miss the comfort you provided, the stability you ensured, the safety net they never thought they'd lose. They are not mourning love, they are mourning the loss of control over you. Now they scramble to replace what they lost, to find another source of light, another steady presence to absorb their chaos. But here's the truth, your light was never something they could own. It was something you chose to share. And when they failed to appreciate it, when they took it for granted, when they drained you without replenishing, you took it back. Now, they are forced to navigate the darkness alone. They sit with the consequences of their own neglect, trying to find a way to fill the void your absence left behind. But they will never find another you. And the best part, this time they don't get a second chance. You shattered the cage they built for you. They never feared losing you. They feared you realizing you never needed them in the first place. From the beginning, they built a cage around you, but they never called it that. They wrapped it in pretty words: love, loyalty, duty, convincing you that staying was the right thing, the safe thing, the only thing. They made it seem like protection, like belonging, but the truth, it was never about keeping you safe. It was about keeping you small. They needed you predictable, manageable, easy to control. You were supposed to fit neatly into their world without disrupting it. You were never meant to think beyond the walls they placed around you. You were never supposed to ask questions, never supposed to dream bigger than the life they mapped out for you. And for a while, you accepted it. You told yourself this was just how things were, that maybe, if you shrank yourself just a little more, it would all finally make sense. But something inside you never stopped whispering. A quiet, growing voice reminding you that you were never meant to live in a cage. Maybe it was a single moment of clarity. Maybe it was 1,000 small betrayals that finally became too heavy to ignore. But suddenly, the illusion shattered. The walls they built around you weren't walls at all, they were chains. And you were never meant to be bound. They saw the change before you even spoke it. The shift in your energy, the quiet defiance in your eyes. You started standing taller, speaking louder, becoming who you were always meant to be, and that's when the panic set in. They didn't want to lose you, but not because they loved you, because they loved controlling you. So they did what people like them always do. They called you selfish, ungrateful, rebellious. They said you were changing, turning cold, becoming someone they no longer recognized. But let's be clear, you didn't leave them. You left the version of yourself that fit inside their cage. You left the silence, the smallness, the endless need for their approval, and the truth they now face: they can't follow you because they were never willing to grow, never willing to break their own chains. They were comfortable in their illusion, and now all they can do is watch as you rise, knowing that they never had power over you. You were just waiting to take it back. Their power over you was an illusion. For so long, they thought they had you under their control. They were careful, wrapping their dominance in soft words and quiet manipulation. It was never direct, never loud, just subtle enough to keep you questioning yourself. This is just how things are. This is how love works. This is what loyalty looks like. Every boundary you set was blurred just enough to make you doubt yourself. Every decision you made was quietly influenced. Every act of defiance was met with just enough guilt to keep you in line. But here's what they never understood. Real power doesn't come from control. It comes from the ability to walk away. And the moment you realized their power over you only existed because you allowed it, it was over. They miscalculated. They underestimated you. They thought you would always need their validation, always seek their approval. They believed they had shaped you into someone who would never leave, never question, never wake up. But they were wrong. You saw through it. You saw through the manipulation, the guilt trips, the mind games, the quiet ways they made you feel like you were nothing without them. And so you left, not in anger, not in revenge, but in clarity. You stopped bending, stopped shrinking, stopped second-guessing yourself just to fit into their world. And that was the most dangerous thing you could have done in their eyes. Because now they have to face the one truth they never wanted to accept. Without you, they are powerless. They're scrambling now, lost in a world where you no longer play by their rules. They are trying to process what happened, searching for ways to pull you back in. But deep down they know, the illusion is gone. The grip they had on you was never real. It only worked because you let it. And now that you're gone, their empire of control has collapsed into nothing. They sit in disbelief, replaying every moment, asking themselves how this happened. But the answer is simple. They built their power on the assumption that you would never leave. And you just proved them wrong. The black hole they can't escape. Some losses are temporary. Others leave scars so deep, nothing ever grows there again. Your absence isn't just noticed, it's felt. A rupture, a void, a gaping hole in the center of their world. They thought they could move on, replace you, fill the space with someone new. But some spaces can't be filled. You weren't just another person in their life. You were the foundation, the glue that held everything together, the quiet force that made sense of their chaos, the stability they never appreciated until it was gone. They assumed you would always be there, that no matter how much they ignored you, dismissed you, overlooked you, you would still show up. Now they are left with nothing but the emptiness of what they destroyed. Your absence rings in every hollow moment, every awkward silence, every reminder that something feels off, but they can't figure out how to fix it. They distract themselves, fill their time with noise, try to pretend that life goes on without you, but deep down they know they ruined something they can never get back. They thought they had time to take you for granted, time to push you aside, time to play their mind games and assume you'd always be there to fix their mistakes. But time just ran out, and now they have to live with the consequences. Every day without you is a painful reminder of what they lost. Every moment feels just a little colder, a little emptier, a little more unbearable. Because what they are realizing, slowly, painfully, is that your absence isn't just a gap, it's a wound. One that won't heal, one they can't escape. One they will be forced to live with, day after day, haunted by the truths. They thought they could live without you. They were wrong. They fed off your strength, now they're starving. They never loved you. They loved how you carried them while your own world was falling apart. They loved the way you absorbed their chaos, how you stood strong when they were weak, how you held their world together while they refused to lift a finger. They came to you with their wounds, their struggles, their brokenness, and you, being who you are, poured everything into healing them. You were their stability, their safe space, their shield from reality, but they never stopped to ask who was holding you up. You made it look effortless, didn't you? You carried their burdens with a calm face, swallowed your struggles in silence, and ensured that everything kept running smoothly. And because you never broke, they assumed you never would. They mistook your endurance for duty, your patience for permission. They thought your strength was infinite, something they could drain endlessly without consequence. But resilience is not infinite. Even the strongest soul will crack under the weight of unreciprocated giving. And then one day you were just gone, no more emotional labor, no more fixing their mess, no more being their safety net. And now, they're starving. The same people who dismissed your pain now find themselves gasping for air, drowning in the very chaos you once shielded them from. Their problems haven't gone away. They've only become more unbearable without you there to soften the impact. They look for someone else to lean on, someone else to save them. But no one can carry them the way you did, because you weren't just another person in their life, you were their foundation. Now the cracks are showing, the dysfunction is unavoidable, and for the first time, they are being forced to deal with their own wreckage. Let them struggle, let them panic, because this time you're not coming back to save them. They can copy you, but they can't replace you. They will try. Oh, they will try. They will look for someone who talks like you, moves like you, carries themselves with the same quiet confidence. They will find someone who mimics your kindness, who echoes your wisdom, who gives them a temporary illusion of what they lost. But they will soon realize a copy will always fade, while the original remains untouchable. They thought you were replaceable, that someone else could step into your role seamlessly. But they failed to understand that what you brought to their life wasn't just presence, it was depth. It was something that could never be replicated, never imitated, never forged. The connection you gave, the energy you carried, the way you moved through the world with a light that was uniquely yours, that can't be manufactured. At first, they will convince themselves they've found an alternative. They will parade around their new distractions, pretending that they are unaffected by your absence. But deep down, they feel it. The forced laughter, the shallow conversations, the emptiness that lingers beneath every interaction. No matter how hard they try, they cannot recreate what made you special. And the worst part, they know it. They may not admit it out loud, but in the quiet moments, in the stillness of their thoughts, they realize the truth. They lost something irreplaceable. The realization will creep in like a slow poison, a growing ache that no substitute can heal. They built their world on illusions, on pretending, on performing, on bending to fit whatever mold made them feel accepted. But you were real, you spoke what you meant, you saw what others ignored, you refused to be anything but yourself, and that was terrifying to them. Because authenticity can't be controlled, and they were never ready for something they couldn't mold to their liking. Now they are left with nothing but a painful reality. They can mimic, they can copy, they can pretend, but they will never have another you. Your absence is their mirror, and they can't look away. Walking away wasn't just a loss for them. It was a brutal awakening. They always saw you as the one who would stay, the one who would clean up their messes, smooth over their mistakes, and hold their fragile world together. They assumed your patience was endless, that no matter how much they drained you, you would always return. But now they are forced to face the truth. The cracks were always there. You were just the one filling them. Without you, their world doesn't just feel emptier, it feels exposed. Every flaw, every dysfunction, every toxic cycle they thought they could ignore is now laid bare. They can no longer deflect, no longer distract, no longer pretend that their problems were never their own, because you are no longer there to shield them from the weight of their own reality. And so, they look into the mirror and ask the questions they never wanted to face. Why didn't I appreciate them when I had the chance? Why did I push them so far that they had no choice but to leave? What does it say about me that someone so rare, so giving, so loyal, decided I wasn't worth staying for? That thought, it's poison, because it's one thing to be abandoned. It's another to realize you earned it. Your absence is their mirror, and for the first time they are seeing themselves clearly. No more illusions, no more justifications, no more pretending. They are staring at the reflection of the person they have always been, the person you saw long ago, the person you realized would never change. And the hardest truth of all, it's too late. They lost the best thing they had. And now, every single day, they are haunted by one undeniable reality. They were the reason you left. They gambled on your guilt and lost everything. They never thought you'd leave because they were never afraid of losing you. They weren't careful with you, weren't mindful of how much they took, weren't concerned about how much they drained. Why? Because they counted on your guilt to keep you bound to them. They knew exactly how to play the game, how to pull just enough on your heartstrings to keep you giving, keep you sacrificing, keep you locked in a cycle where your needs were always second, where your love was measured by how much you were willing to endure. Every time you questioned them, they fed you the same poison. After everything I've done for you, you would just leave me like that. They weaponized your empathy, twisted your compassion into a leash. Every time you wanted to walk away, they reminded you of how much they had invested in you, how much they had sacrificed for you, as if love was a debt that you owed. And for a while, it worked. You second-guessed yourself. You stayed when you should have left. You gave when you had nothing left. You let their expectations dictate your life because they convinced you that choosing yourself was betrayal. But then something shifted. Maybe it was a single moment of clarity. Maybe it was years of exhaustion finally collapsing into the undeniable truth. You weren't betraying them. You were betraying yourself. You finally saw the game for what it was. The guilt they used against you was nothing more than a leash, a tool to keep you small, to keep you available, to keep you under control. And the moment you understood that, everything changed. You left. No hesitation, no apologies, no looking back, and that broke them, not just because you were gone, but because they lost the one thing that gave them power over you, your guilt. Now they sit there, replaying it over and over, trying to make sense of how you slipped through their fingers. But they failed to see the truth. They never had you in the first place. They only had your guilt. And now, they have nothing. You were their comfort. Now you're their wake-up call. They thought they had time to push you aside, time to take you for granted, time to play their mind games and assume you'd always be there to clean up their mess. They thought they could delay appreciation, postpone change, put off gratitude for another day. But time just ran out. Your departure wasn't just a loss to them. It was an earthquake, a siren blasting through their delusions, a wrecking ball slamming into the false security they built for themselves. They never imagined a world where you weren't waiting in the background, always ready to forgive, always willing to sacrifice, always holding space for them even when they gave you nothing in return. But now they're drowning in the consequences of their own arrogance. Every misstep they made, every choice they neglected, every moment they ignored your worth, it all comes crashing down on them. They assumed you would always bend, always endure, always make one more excuse for them. But they were wrong. Your silence is their loudest punishment. They look around and feel the emptiness where you used to be. They try to reach for you, but you're gone. And every single day, they are haunted by what they lost. The comfort of knowing you'd always return, gone. The certainty that they could always get one more chance, gone. The belief that you needed them more than they needed you, completely shattered. They can distract themselves, fill their time with noise, surround themselves with temporary replacements, but nothing feels the same, because you weren't just another person in their life, you were the anchor, the balance, the force that made things work. And now they have to sit in the wreckage of their own making. And what stings the most? They did this to themselves. They had something rare, something extraordinary, and they let it slip through their fingers. And now, every second without you is a painful reminder of just how badly they failed. But you're done being their lesson. Let them wake up alone, because you're never looking back. You were the fire in their gray world. They surrounded themselves with the average, the predictable, the safe, a dull existence where everything stayed the same, where nothing challenged them, where mediocrity was comfortable. And then you walked in. You weren't just another person in their orbit. You were the exception, the force of nature that disrupted their comfort, the fire that exposed the cracks in their stagnation. You made them feel something real, something intense, something they were never brave enough to chase on their own. Without even trying, you shook their world. Your energy, your ambition, your authenticity, it all stood in stark contrast to the routine they had built around themselves. You reminded them, without saying a word, that life was more than just existing. You were proof that something extraordinary was possible, and that terrified them. Because here's the truth, people like them don't want to rise, they want to remain. They crave stability even if it means settling for less. They talk about greatness but refuse to do the work to achieve it. And you were living proof of what was possible. You weren't just a presence in their life, you were a mirror. A reflection of everything they could be if only they had the courage to try. But instead of rising to meet you, they resented you for it. Because it's easier to hate the fire than to admit you're afraid of burning. They liked keeping you close because it made them feel like they had access to something greater. But deep down, they knew they would never match your hunger, your drive, your relentless need to evolve. So they did what people like them always do. They tried to dim you, to contain you, to make you smaller so they wouldn't have to grow. And now that you're gone, the illusion is shattered. They thought they could slip back into their routine, their comfortable mediocrity, their safe little world. But something is missing now, something they can't replace. The space you once filled is now a gaping hole, a reminder of everything they ignored, everything they could have been, and everything they will never become. They didn't just lose you, they lost their only chance at more. And now, they are left to sit in the emptiness, haunted by the truth, that they had the extraordinary in their hands, and they let it slip away. They wanted to own you, not free you. They never truly valued you. They valued owning you. You weren't a person to them, you were a resource, a possession, something they could mold to fit their needs. Your presence made their life easier, your energy fueled their existence, your kindness became their safety net. But your freedom, that was never part of the deal. They never imagined a version of life where you had the right to choose. They convinced themselves that your loyalty meant self-abandonment, that your love meant sacrificing yourself to keep them comfortable. They mistook your patience for permanence, your kindness for submission, your silence for approval. And every time you bent, every time you adjusted, every time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace, they took it as proof that you belonged to them. But what they never understood is this: you were never meant to be owned. You were never meant to be confined by their expectations, never meant to shrink yourself so they could feel bigger. They operated under the illusion that you would always prioritize their needs over your own, that your boundaries were suggestions, not rules. They thought they had tamed you, broken you, convinced you that their world was the only one worth living in. And then just like that, you were gone. No more justifying, no more explaining, no more giving to those who only knew how to take. You broke free, and with you, you took something they never expected to lose, the power they thought they had over you. Now they are left with nothing but a brutal truth. The version of you they loved never even existed. It was a projection, a construct they built in their minds. And the real you, the one who refuses to be controlled, the one who walks away without looking back, that's the you they never wanted to see. They don't grieve your absence. They grieve the loss of control, the loss of ownership, the loss of their ability to shape you to fit their needs. And that is what haunts them the most. You left without begging, and that terrifies them. Some doors don't slam. They close quietly without a sound, because the loudest message is the one delivered in silence. They expected a scene, a final plea, a desperate attempt to be understood. They thought you would cry, beg, or at least leave them with one last argument to prove your worth. But instead, you did the one thing they never prepared for. You simply walked away. No apologies, no explanations, no fight for closure. Just a quiet, unshakable decision that left them standing in the wreckage of their own illusion. They thought they had time to keep you under their control, time to manipulate, time to guilt, time to convince you to stay just a little longer. But what they failed to understand is that your patience was never weakness. It was a countdown. And when the final second ran out, you were already gone. Your departure wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about something much bigger: self-respect. You didn't need permission to leave. You didn't need their understanding. Because when you know your worth, you don't negotiate it. You don't lower yourself for people who never saw your value in the first place. And now, they are haunted by the finality of it all. Because for the first time, they are realizing that their power over you was never real. It was an illusion, one that only worked because you allowed it. The moment you chose yourself, the entire game collapsed. They call you selfish. They say you're heartless. But what they really mean is, how dare you choose yourself over us? Because the truth is, they were never afraid of losing you. They were afraid of losing control over you. And now that they have, they are left with nothing but the mess they created. Your silence, it's the loudest thing they've ever heard, because you didn't just leave a space. You left a void filled with every truth they refused to face, a void that reminds them with every passing moment that the person they once relied on is never coming back. They thought they were the ones in control. They thought you needed them. But now they are realizing something much harder to swallow. You were the one holding everything together. And now that you're gone, their world is unraveling piece by piece. And you're finally free. The chosen ones rise. This was never a loss for you. It was your awakening. Walking away wasn't an act of rebellion. It was a return to yourself. You didn't leave out of spite. You didn't leave because you were weak. You left because you finally understood that choosing yourself was the most powerful thing you could ever do. They thought you were bound to them. They thought you would always crave their validation, always stay in their cycle, always fear what life would be like without them. But they failed to see the truth. You were never truly theirs to keep. You were never meant to stay in a world that couldn't hold your greatness, in a reality that demanded you shrink, in a space that only valued you for what you could provide. And now you rise, not just as someone who survived, but as someone who thrived, someone who reclaimed their power, someone who realized that their worth was never dependent on someone else's recognition. They never thought you'd leave, but now they can't believe it's final, because they know deep down you are never coming back, and that is your power. If this resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop 77 in the comments to mark the moment you chose yourself. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because the chosen ones don't just survive, we rise.